Okay, we can't really get started until we can get 2 note takers. Nobody? All but the last. Thanks, Elliot. Sure. I could use a second one. Can you help, Pam? Thank you. Oh, well, I know. Are we ready? All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. You are in the SCIM working group session. If you're not expecting to talk about identity management provisioning, you may be in the wrong room. Oh, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, yeah, Aaron is not speaking. I'm on the mic. Okay, so next slide, please. All right, so it is Tuesday. Hopefully everybody should be familiar with the note well. I don't think I see any new faces. So just please remember to take note of the note well. Next slide. Just a reminder, code of conduct, extend respect as we speak to the business at hand. Don't take things to a personal level. We are here to further the global internet, so be prepared to participate as an active participant. So thank you, Pam and Elliot, for being the note takers. If we could have somebody to also watch the Zulip, we as the chairs will try and do the same, but it would help if somebody else was here to help channel any questions that might come through there as well. Oh, thanks, Kathleen and Peter. Yeah. Okay, so with that, we can get to the task at hand. Okay, as the chairs, kind of trying to be brief, agenda bashing. So we're going through just the agenda bashing right now. Danny is going to talk about the Delta queries draft as well as the cursor pagination draft. This is not the updated slide. Phil, is it Jen that will talk to the SCIM events?
I'm not sure she's still going to.
Okay. Either you or Jen can speak to the SCIM events. And then we've added to the agenda, Elliot Lear will be providing the update on the device model. So we did do an early IoT and sector review for that draft. So Elliot can give us an update on the feedback and where he is with respect to that update. Any comments on the agenda? Going once.
Danny, did you want cursor pagination first?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I will reorder that in the uploaded
Updated.
version, not on the slides.
So Aaron's going to be updating the agenda on the meeting link because the chair slides will take longer. Okay, so with that, Danny, you wanted to start with cursor pagination. Do you want to share your slides or did you want us? Oh, never mind. Aaron's uploading already.
Thank you, Aaron. So yeah, this is just really 2 slides. Oh, I have control now. Cool. So just a quick update on cursor pagination. We've gotten, I think, 4 or 5 different sets of feedback through official channels, I'll call it, various like working group reviews regarding cursor pagination over the past, I don't know, 6 to 9 months. We've addressed, I think, virtually all of that feedback. I think we might need to follow up with some of those working groups to get them to, I guess, review the changes and sign off. But in general, we're doing good there, I think. Our current sort of main and possibly final real blocker at this stage of things is we need proof of interoperability. There are some instances of cursor-based pagination in SCIM out there in the wild, but they were generally all developed by the original author, Matt Peterson. And it's not really interoperability if the same person writes the client and the server. So I think we've got, I don't know, we'll say hope or whatever on getting that that proof of interoperability to exist. We're having some conversations. We might have people who can help, but we will gladly take any additional help if anybody tracking this either has already implemented or is willing to help us do sort of hackathon-y basic implementation of this, because I imagine having more than one client and one server probably helps us along the journey.
So let me ask here in the room, is anybody working on an implementation? Show of hands. Or for those who are remote, if they can channel that in the chat.
I can say that I'm working on an implementation, but I don't know when it'll be viable. So if there's anybody else, yeah.
Right. So taking my hat off real quick, just as representative of Cisco, we are also looking to doing an implementation, but we need to staff that up as well. Staff. We're looking for the people, but we do have the interest to move that forward too.
Yeah, I think same for us. We have plans to implement, but yeah,
From AWS.
when it will be done, yeah.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, when you speak up for the note takers, state your name
Okay. Yeah, I'm Anjali.
and
Yeah,
affiliation.
we have plans.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Oh, I just said state your name and your affiliation.
Yeah, I'm Anjali from AWS. We have plans, but
Okay.
when it will be available, it's not. Yeah.
So I've started on the Shepherd write-up. So let's just keep a pulse on that. Did you guys submit an update to the draft based on the comments that you got?
Yes.
Yeah, we've done several, I think 2 or 3 versions since we started getting feedback.
Okay.
As part of the last call, the most recent update was right before the submission cutoff for IETF 120.
Okay. So I'll go back and review that as well. Okay.
Oh, and then only other real things of note, Matt Peterson, the original author, is back on the draft as an author. We have taken long enough that his career moves have put him back into a position that can work on this.
That's great.
We should have at least one more draft coming in the future just to sort of tidy things up.
That'd be great. Was that it?
Can I
Deb
just
wants to
ask
say
for
something.
clarification? So you say SCIM working group, it's working group last call, right? Not IETF last call? I mean, you haven't handed it to me or Roman or anybody else?
No, it's just working group.
Just working group
call.
last call? Okay,
Yeah.
good. I just new and paranoid.
Yep. No, it's Danny meant SCIM working group last call. Because I still need to shepherd it and send it your way. Yep.
But
catch.
yeah, on this topic, that is all we have.
Okay. Great. Thanks. All right. So next up is the Delta queries.
Yep, and Anjali and I will both be presenting on that, but Anjali will start us off.
Are you sharing or they're sharing?
Yeah. Next slides, please. This is Anjali from AWS. So before the IETF cutoff, we have published a new version of the Delta Query draft. It's a new overhauled version, lots of changes from the previous version. Essentially, we have introduced capability to not only return changed resources, but on those updated resources, the draft specification allows for tracking changed attributes only as well. So in our initial draft, we had added qualifiers to say which resource has been um, a- added or created, updated or deleted. Now with this new version, we have introduced support for an updated resource to say specify which actual attributes have changed and only return those instead of returning a full resource object. So that's kind of a further level of optimization on Delta queries. Just to give you a context on what these Delta queries are, like Delta queries can be used to return um, modified resources. So modified means like created, updated, or deleted. This is essentially can be used for use cases where a system is constantly looking for updates from a SCIM server or client side, SCIM server, instead of just a push model. And also some anti-entropy use cases where there are workflows where you want to do an anti-entropy check to make sure that the data on one side of the either Steam client or server is in sync with the data on the Steam server side. For representing attribute level changes, we are relying or we are
Sorry.
reusing the Steam patch operation.
Excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Angelina. Your
Mhm.
microphone isn't that good. Can you slow your speech just a little bit so that the note takers can take notes?
Okay. Are you getting a better voice?
Yeah, it's just a little bit muffled, Anjali.
Okay. Is it better now? Um,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it's a little better, Anjali. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So what I was mentioning was that the new specification to represent attribute level changes, we are relying or we are reusing the skin patch operation semantics for representing added, removed, or replaced attribute values. Uh, yeah, and we have already published the new version of the draft. Not sure if anyone has got a chance to read through it, but if not, like you can go through it as well. Next slide, please. In order to represent this new specification, we are introducing a few new endpoints. One endpoint being dot delta token. This endpoint is used to retrieve the delta token, the initial delta token. So in our previous draft, how it was proposed was that anybody trying to use delta queries for any of their use case would use delta queries itself to get a full baseline of all the users and groups and membership information. And then in the first initial Delta query with full retrieval of all resources, the response will include a Delta token on the last page of the Delta query. However, to make it more optimal, we have separated the concerns. What we are proposing is, in order to retrieve all the users and groups via a list operation, the SCIM client or the SCIM client can use an existing endpoints of list users and list groups to retrieve all the users and groups and set up their baseline. And in order to start the Delta query, we are providing with a separate endpoint, which is /Delta token, which is just going to return the token that represents the point in time of now. And then further on, the client can then start using the /.delta endpoint to retrieve the resources that have changed or added or deleted from the time when the Delta token was issued. And the Delta token that was retrieved from the .delta token endpoint will be provided as part of the Delta request. There are a few new messages that have been added to the specification. Um, it is the Delta token itself to represent the token, which will be a response from the /.delta token endpoint. For the Delta query, we are using a post task pattern, which is similar to the .search pattern that we have existing in SCIM, which has a request and a response. Next slide, please. The request for Delta queries is built on the /.search. As you can see, we've used the same task pattern. And if you look at the example request, it includes the Delta token provided by the initial Delta token retrieved from the .delta endpoint and any parameters such as filters or attribute. So this gives us a benefit that all the search parameters can be applied to Delta queries as well. And this query will then return a response, which is a new response object called Delta. And I will hand over to Denny to talk about the Delta response object.
Yeah, thanks, Anjali. So yeah, the deeper level of details is of course in the draft, but just some key things to call out about how the response is designed in this draft. It's returned inside of a we'll call it a Delta response message schema. It was I think the middle of the three on the previous slide. The motivation for that versus like let's say treating it just as like /deltas or anything like its own endpoint separate from the resource endpoints like /users and /groups was because I guess the delta or the changes being returned isn't really an object, and we didn't want to represent it as such because then some of the rules in SCIM around how you represent a resource start making things a lot more complicated when really we just want a wrapper around the changed object. I guess yeah, that the second bullet point, the Delta responses, or there's like Delta objects, not objects, but just to explain that the Delta objects, I said it again, are the Delta responses, sorry, are returned inside of the a list response style response, just as any other list of results would be returned. And then that response object, which we'll get to in a moment, is sort of a bimodal object or representation where it can either return the that sort of traditional or full state of an object, or just the attribute level changes. And there's two separate attributes inside of that Delta response schema to allow for that. And so we have a couple slides now that are sort of examples of how different sorts of changes will be represented. So here we have a create. Probably key things to call out are we have that changed resource ID. There's self-explanatory. That's the ID in this case of the user that was changed. What the resource type is, the change type. There are three: create, update, and delete. And then when I mentioned the bimodal methods of representation, we're seeing data right here, which is the full representation rather than attribute only level changes. And so creates, for instance, will always show that full representation because you can't have attribute level like changes only on a creation. Updates, the first 4 lines of the response are pretty similar, other than change type is update. And then we see that instead of the data attribute, we have operations. Operations is multi-valued, and there can be more than one operation that has taken place. And in this operation, the name dot given name, so the given name sub-attribute on the name complex attribute on this user has been replaced, and the new value is Jim. Deletes, similar representation. They don't use either data or operations because the attributes on the resources don't matter because the object has been deleted. So all you really need is that notification that it has that the deletion has happened. And then the final slide. This is a complicated topic. We've probably overlooked a bunch of things. We need people to review it. We need feedback. We generally feel that this is a problem that needs to be solved in SCIM. Right now, we can't see wide adoption of any sort of pool-based model of retrieving large sets of data via SCIM. They're just the way that the industry sort of has implemented SCIM has been very heavily slanted towards pushing data from source to target. And this seems like a massive blocker to the opposite use case of pooling data. So yes, we need feedback, please. And then I'll stop talking, but I see 2 hands up in the queue.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
This is really quick. I'm just wondering on the delete case if there isn't a need for metadata, like when it was deleted, would that be of help to the receiver in the sense of its own processing of data or things of that nature other than just this user is no longer present?
That is a good point. I don't think any of us who were involved in authoring this had thought of that, but thanks for the feedback.
This is Elliot. Hi, Danny. I just had a query, which is how does this match up with normal RESTful HTTP semantics? Are we varying further from those? And I'm looking at like delete, for instance, and if you're trying to do this in a RESTful call, do you actually want to return anything is one question in that case. And maybe I'm just a SCIM novice in this point, but we're looking at this now, right, in our implementations. Do we actually need to delete? Can we just return a 200, for instance, for those cases in RESTful? So.
Yeah, so in this case, you're not querying against a specific object. Say the get / users / ID value. Rather, the Delta query is going to run either at the root of the server or against a specific resource like users or groups. And rather than, I guess, either polling against the entirety of the directory or whichever endpoint, and then having to list out the full list and compare to see if anything has gone away. That delete that is returned as a Delta response message gives that final going away notification of, hey, this thing has gone away or it's been deleted.
So is it targeting a specific resource or a group of resources at this point?
It's targeting the resource endpoint, so just / users, and it's not ever being used. You're not ever specifying like /users/123, like the ID of a resource.
Okay, then I guess I agree with George's comment in that case. I understand a little better.
Dean, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. George, I fully agree with your commentary about returning some timestamp of when the object was deleted. And I want to call out the use case, right? Because one of the use cases is to know when licensing should stop for a user being provisioned or deprovisioned from a cloud services, right? So for auditability purposes and being able to understand that transition, it would be very helpful to have that timestamp mechanism in there. My concern is that then it means you need to track the state of deleted objects, and I don't know how SCIM implementations actually track the state of deleted objects. Are they actually deleted from the database, or are they just marked as being deleted, but they still physically exist or logically exist in that database? So that's an open-ended question that we should figure out how we answer.
Yeah, I think Janelle Adams had brought this up way back when we were having these discussions.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Is it a soft delete?
Yes.
Is it a hard delete? Yeah.
I think from Delta Query's perspective, yes, if the implementers have to support returning what records have deleted, the implementers will have to keep track of some meta information about the deleted record for a certain duration of time. Like that would be an additional implementation in order to support the Delta Query from a delete perspective.
Is it necessary then to make return, if we implement something around the deletion timestamp, is it necessary to make that optional because it may be implementation specific as to whether that can be tracked or not? I just think it's something we need to keep our eyes on.
That's a good point. If this should be made optional or kept as mandatory. However, if we don't make it mandatory, then the way to retrieve the deleted objects is what, as Danny mentioned, that you have to retrieve all resources to know what has been deleted. So it kind of
This is
defeats the
true.
purpose then. Yeah.
All right. Well, I look forward to giving the draft a read and providing feedback in the near future.
Yeah, I was going to say, Anjali, as a next step, should we ask for volunteers to read the draft and provide more feedback? We can certainly do that.
Definitely, that would be really helpful.
So can we ask for some volunteers to review and provide feedback on this draft?
I'll volunteer.
Thanks, Dean. Can we get a couple more? George? Thanks, Elliot. And your name? David. Just so the note takers can capture it. All right.
Yeah, and that is all we had.
Great. And you have 3 volunteers. So look to them.
Yep. Thank you to the volunteers. Look forward to reading feedback.
Thank you so much.
Great. All right. Who was next? SCIM events, I think.
Yes.
So Phil or Jen? I can't. Is she on? Jen, we can't hear you. We're back to that problem, Deb. We've been having problems with Meet Echo. So Jen, Phil is here. So do you mind if he gets started? Thumbs up? Oh yeah, she said that's fine. Actually, I have to give you the mic because I'm an author of this.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'm Phil Hunt now from Independent Identity, Inc., independent consulting. I want to thank Jen, first of all, for putting together the update. We're just nearing the end. So let's go to it with the next slide.
I think I
Nearing
got
the
my
end
audio
of-
to work. Can you hear me now?
Maturity of the draft.
Yeah,
Oh, we can hear you now, Jen.
I think that'll become clear very shortly. So just a reminder, what is it? It's based on the security event token, and we're defining a set of events that that can be put together based on a security event token format. And you normally use them along with the set transfer protocols, RFC 8935 and 8936. And what this does is it enables you to share asynchronously notices about changes that have occurred in a SCIM server, or if you're a SCIM endpoint or you want to receive events asynchronously, you can do that. We've also included in the draft the ability to do async request completion. A couple of people in the room said they had cases where a SCIM protocol completion might take hours. So is there a way to have an event to say, okay, that provisioning request is now done? So that's now in the spec. Basically, the two broad use cases, if you're talking about SCIM to SCIM endpoints, whether in domain or across domains, is you could use it for resource replication, or you could do what we call provisioning coordination, which is a more loosely coupled thing where you share less information. This entity has changed, so you might want to do something about it. And if you need more information, you can call back and do a SCIM get to get the raw data if you need it. So that's the two use cases. Basically, you have events for each of that mirror the SCIM protocol. So if somebody does, if SCIM receives a create request and it processes a create request, the server would issue a SCIM create event that echoes that for any interested parties. So next slide. So in draft 5, we removed how events are delivered. I sort of put that in originally because people weren't familiar with the security event token set of specs and how that works. So that's not really normative. So that's been removed. We added more definition to the version tag, and it lines up with the original RFC 7644 for SCIM protocol section 3.14, which describes what an E-tag means to a SCIM resource. So now when an event has been issued, the final state of the resource is reflected in the version tag that tells you what it is. And that could enable you, if you wanted to do a further SCIM protocol request following that, to do an HTTP precondition request. If you want to say, okay, do this update if the E-tag matches, so on and so forth. We've updated security considerations, modified some attribute syntax. I have to look up, I've forgotten what that one was. Now we're into final edits and clarifications, and added a reference to the SSF spec over in OpenID. In that regards, it'd be great to have a side meeting about SSF and how that can work and what are the limitations of SSF at this point, because SSF still needs some changes to really work with SCIM. One of the issues with SCIM is that SCIM tends to be bidirectional. A SCIM server can send events, it can also want to receive events, and SSF has some limitations. But that's in the spec now as a non-normative reference, so that if people want to look for, okay, how do I implement this? What are the pieces I need? There's the set protocol specs, there's SSF for management, and so on and so forth. Next. And I think that's it. So the next step is to call for working group last call, we believe. So
Yeah, we
I guess
also
we'll need
called
some-
for it on email like a couple weeks ago, and didn't have any feedback that came in since then.
Correct.
Tony, do you want to say something?
And that's it. I don't know how much time we have left.
Tony
Plenty of
Nadlin.
time.
So
Tony.
yeah, I didn't see anything about time span. So things take quite a while from a security event standpoint. And what happens if I didn't see a timeout value of, how long it's going to take a while to process, and what happens if something else happens in between? Can I time out this particular event?
So that may or may not happen, but I think if you're asking, can the client time out?
Or can it be is there a timeout value for it? Which
That
I
would
didn't
be
see
up
it in
to-
the spec. So
I think you'd have to go back to the HTTP async request. And really what we were doing on the end of it is saying, if you issue an async request and if the server supports it, if the server doesn't support it, it'll just complete normally. So this is HTTP stuff, not SCIM really.
Right.
So if it responds, what we've said is in the response, this is how you find out about the result. So that's what we've defined in the spec. And then when the event comes, you'll get the security event token event. And in there is things like the time of event, the time the set was issued and so forth. So the requester knows when they made the request, the time of the event would be when it got processed, and then the time the event was issued.
If it got processed, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
If it got, so the
That's my
result could be
concern.
an error,
right, that's my
timed out.
concern. Yeah. Okay.
right? And that's all specified.
I didn't see it in.
Well, it would come out as an error if it
Anything.
timed out, right?
Okay.
So that would be a normal SCIM error or HTTP protocol error
right.
you're expressing in the event.
Correct.
So there's
Okay.
schema for that.
Okay.
So if I remember correctly, last time Mike wanted to wait before working group last call to get some more feedback about the SSF and SCIM events relationship. Do you feel like that has now been?
I don't see a normative relationship because all we're doing is defining event types. The issue with SSF is when you get to transmitting it, RFC 8935 and 8936 are the physical transport mechanisms. SSF is really about how you manage streams as a logical entity where you're going to use 8935 and 8936 to do the transfers. So I don't see a way editorially that SSF is a requirement in any normative way.
Yeah, I guess my question was more: do you feel like the discussion is
I think
happened
that-
with the right people?
As far as I know,
resolve
it's
the-
resolved, but I would have to ask them to comment, to be fair.
I'm an author, so.
Yeah, the discussion is resolved. The authors and side discussions decided that it's good as non-normative.
Yeah, so this is Nancy as an author as well. So we did have some discussions in the shared signals working group and the open ID. But I think in part is why we removed the normative reference in the draft as well, was to ensure that we had that decoupling.
Okay. Okay, yeah. I mean, that was the last thing we were waiting for before doing the working group last
And
call.
I think if anybody's interested, I'd love to have an SSF SCIM side meeting because I think it's too long to discuss here, but there's sort of some architectural concerns and networking concerns to think about that I think SSF could grow into that would make SCIM endpoints much happier.
But that's an SSF issue.
It's an SSF issue and it's not really related to this working group, I think. I agree.
I do.
Yeah. Have to walk all the way to the mic to just say I'm interested in that side meeting. So is David Brossard, just to record that he's.
Yeah. Sounds great. Thanks, Atul. Thanks, Dave.
This is Dean Sachs. I too would be interested in that side meeting.
No, we haven't. So Would you do that or do we do that?
You can, yeah, you can go ahead and schedule a side meeting. I can help if you want, but it's, they're not chair run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
And then just make sure we announce it.
Okay, so for the remote people, yeah, Phil's gonna organize a side meeting about SSF and SCIM events. I do want to just be very clear for everybody who's interested in that side meeting. Do you feel like it's okay now that this is decoupled that we can move SCIM events to working group last call and it won't be blocked on the SSF relationship?
Can I ask a question first though? SSF, those people are here or no?
There's a few.
There's a few, but is it a community that's ordinarily not here?
Yeah, it's an open ID.
So the problem with side meetings here is technically you have to be registered to be involved in a side meeting. If you did an interim, you do not.
But it's really not just SCIM.
No. So if you have an interim, you can invite all your SSF
Yeah,
people
no, that's fair.
to come, and then they don't have to be registered for an IETF meeting. I mean, you can get a fee waiver for a remote, super easy, right? But why put them through the aggravation?
Not all of them are here at the IETF.
I don't think there's anything wrong with doing a side meeting for the people who are here, but you may want to also then do another meeting after this week.
The question is whether you want to, the question is, are you going to leave out people and are they going to be upset when you do it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have skin in this game, right? So.
Yeah, just Phil Hunt has, for my 2 cents, I think it'd be useful to have a meeting for those that are here at IETF. And then that would help set the stage for a, should we have an official SSF work group, SCIM co-meeting or something down the road? How do you think, Atul?
Yeah, I guess I think it'll help to have a side meeting, but I think I can think of a couple of people who are not here who might be interested in it. So it'll be good to have an interim meeting.
Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't you use this time, the side meeting time, to like make a plan for what you want to do in an interim discussion, and we can do an interim meeting in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yep. Great. But it sounds like I didn't hear anybody object to moving to working group last call, despite having this conversation going on. So we can do that call on the list as well. Great. I will do that call on the list. Yes. Great.
All right. Okay, so on to our last one, Mr. Lear. I don't know, did we have their slides?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they were.
Okay, so now I'm standing between everybody and games. Or SSH.
Yeah, there's a SSH, open SSH side meeting.
I think the games are going to be a lot more fun. Okay, so this will be very quick. Essentially, we've been on hold. This document's been on hold waiting for reviews, and the reviews came in just a little bit before I went on vacation, which I have been for most of July. I'm in for just this week, and then I'm back on vacation for a little bit. But we got an excellent security review, really, really well done by someone who knows absolutely nothing about SCIM, actually.
Or IoT.
Or IoT. So he really stuck his neck out, and he did a really good job. One of the challenges with SCIM IETF draft device model, the document, is that people in this were reading it as though there was an interaction with an IoT device, with the actual device. And that's not what the document is about. The document's about provisioning the network or the network infrastructure or the administrative infrastructure for that device. So the reviewer went off in a direction about, oh my goodness, we need to have certain protections here between the device and the rest of the infrastructure. So What that said to me was that we didn't do a good job in the introduction. And so we had to clean up the introduction a little bit. We have an update ready to go for that. We also had to clean up security. We have to clean up security considerations just a little bit more for the reviewer. And second, the last thing he asked for was a cleaner use of how we're going to identify certificates in where we do identify certificates by, you know, do we use subject, do we use serial number. He would like a little bit more clarity on that, and he had some opinions about that. And because this was just as I was going out on vacation, I haven't really parsed through that. But I happen to know some people, and I'm looking at Deb and I'm looking at Nancy, who are really well versed in certificates. So this draft actually is probably worth just a couple of emails between us to make sure that we are doing the right thing in terms of, and the reason we mention certificates at all is that we need to be able to identify clients that are coming in by certificate as part of a provisioning step for application management. So we'll go through that a little bit in the draft, and we can do that in email. But the draft is not really ready for an update yet until that point, and it's not really ready for working group last call until that aspect is fully resolved. Because if we try the working group last call, and even if it got through here, your next reviewer would not be happy, let's put it that way, even before it got to you, and then you'd not be happy too. So we want to get that right.
This is an interesting question. Would you want the same reviewer to do the recheck, or do you want to?
I want the same reviewer to do recheck on this part.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at you, Deb,
Yeah.
you know, as AD. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I don't. I think the thing to do would be to check the issues that he's addressed, and this was an early review, right? And I don't think he may not be the best reviewer for the next round, but I want to address the points he made this round, and then get another reviewer to make sure that we've covered the ground. Anytime we're dealing with provisioning, I want to be really sensitive to the security aspect. So extra review here, we're not in a tearing hurry, you know, is actually a good thing. And so, but what I would like to do is do that as part of at the same time of working group last call, we do the next review round.
So just between you and me and the fence post, he asked whether he would be would he be the same reviewer if you asked for reviews again?
I'm sorry, say again.
He asked if he would be the same reviewer if you asked for another review. And we said yes, unless you don't want it.
Well,
in which case you turn it back.
The only reason not to use the same reviewer.
That's fine. We just need to tell Tiro.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the only reason not to use the same reviewer is that he felt a little bit uncomfortable because he doesn't know much about SCIM.
Yeah,
and
perfectly reasonable.
Like that, so we'll work through that together. It's, you know, I just want to make sure we get really good review on this because it is a security sensitive function. There's a particular aspect of this work that I think is important to consider from the security area, which is that these provisioning objects contain credentials. So that's something I just want to call out. It's something that I think requires a little bit more thought just as we're going through it. Now, these credentials are things like Bluetooth passkeys, for instance, and things like that. But you know, we've been talking through that in the SCIM group for about a year now, and but I want to make sure that people are comfortable with the understanding of what they're seeing.
I mean, you're still going to complete to I can't remember his name's satisfaction. Go back and forth. So Deb, what we did was we did an early review.
Yeah, I saw that. I looked.
Yeah,
I looked at the review
Amazing
too.
So it goes towards. Elliot needs to address those, but then when we do the real sector review,
it's up to you guys then at that point.
We just tell Tara to assign somebody else. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And you got a PKI guy to do the review. So
yeah. So the PKI guy, the PKI is what we really want to fix now.
Yeah. So you got the right guy for that.
Yeah.
Because that's what he does.
It was a great review and really appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah. I was really glad to get the review. Though, as always, right before vacation. Anyway, that's pretty much it. So that's all I have.
6-week vacation.
Yeah. So that's all I have for this time. We expect, what I'm hoping to do is work through that review and have a new version by the middle of August. And what we'd like to do by the middle of August then is start the working group last call at that on that document at that point once we have that updated document. Is that okay with people?
I think I want to review it again.
You want to review personally, you mean?
Well, whoever will be shepherding it, but yeah. Somebody was going to speak up as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Monty.
Oh, you ready, Monty? Ready to review it again?
Yeah.
Well,
Oh.
yeah, and I probably have some more feedback, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Kathleen?
You didn't sign me up to review, but I haven't been following SCIM. I did early on.
Okay. Yeah, if we could do that, like we'll try. In fact, I'll try and bring you in as early as we can. But we do want to start that working group last call at some point soon, because the document is reasonably stable, modulo the security review at this point. So we're thinking it's time to get to the next step.
I also requested an IoT review.
Yeah, the IoT directorate gave us NITs, and
Oh, yeah, that's true.
so we did incorporate the NIT changes in our working document, but I haven't published that in the update. I haven't updated the document yet, and I appreciated both reviews. So, all right, and really that's it. And so
That's it.
yeah. So the next steps then will be updating the document. Monty, you're on the hook for review, and Kathleen's on the hook for review, and you're on the hook for review.
Yeah.
Okay, and then once those are complete, if there are changes, we'll make those changes, and then we'll do working group last call. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right, thank you very much.
Next steps. All right, so that clears our agenda items. Are there any other orders of business that anybody wants to bring up? Going once? Let's see, anybody on the remote?
No.
Nobody on the remote. Okay. We can give you 7 minutes back. How about that? All right. Thank you, everyone. We will close out the session. Thanks, Pam.
There was one when Nancy went to the mic, you asked a question.
All you need to do, yeah. So Pam, the most important thing to capture in the minutes are the action items and the points of contention.
I think it's special.
Huh? So she does an awesome job. Peter will give you word for word scribe. Hear you. So I figured